Okay, so we have here raw umber, burnt sienna, titanium buff, and ultramarine violet. So we're going to work on this wall here. I'll continue this side of the painting. I'm going to be using flat and round. So like last week, I'm going to start with burnt sienna. I'm going to put a bit of burnt ultramarine violet in it. It makes it a little bit more brownish. And take titanium buff. I don't want it to be too light. It's medium tone, because the wall is really light, so there's no need. But we will be putting eventually highlights. So this is kind of a, let me see if I remove this, it's better. Okay, now you can see it. It's actually a very soft brown, but it has, you can see the purple in it, which is great. Now what I'd like to do is show different colors in here. So it's not only one color. So you see some areas you'll see a bit of burnt sienna, some areas you'll see burnt sienna with ultramarine violet. And then we'll do some highlighting after. Okay. It's okay if it's heavy, dark, light, it doesn't matter. The more layers we put, the nicer it looks. You can get a textured wall, so no smooth, not too smooth, it's better. It will dry darker, so it's awesome. It's great. Bottom part, there's a little bit of a wall in there, and it's the color. I can see the color. It's a warm color. So I'm going to. It's a white border. So instead of putting just titanium buff, I'm going to use titanium buff and put in it a tiny bit of burnt sienna. Okay. Let's pick up raw umber with that and then do the underneath of this. Using raw umber, burnt sienna, doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be exactly the same what you see, but just a color in there. Then take raw umber and darken the color at the bottom. The paint. Some reflection. It's almost black in the reference. So I'm just taking raw umber for now. Reflection. To get a darker reflection, I can use a bit of ultramarine violet. And also just a couple of lines here, because it's pretty dark in here underneath this wall. Perfect. That's good. Lovely. Since we're using the colors we're using right now, we can continue with burnt sienna, raw umber, titanium buff. Let's put a bit more raw umber in here. And let's do the stairs, because they're light, right? I know they're very light. I can even go like this. It's just covered the canvas for now. It's like a glaze. And I can, after, work with lights and darks. I just want to put the light colored without a dark background underneath. It doesn't have to be very dark. Now, underneath those stairs, there's a dark shadow. Okay, let's do that. I'm not worried about the darkness of these colors, paint. Perfect. The darker, the better. And it's browns, so we're not putting black here, we're putting brown. So it's good. It's like a brown, purple brown. It's perfect. It will dry darker. Okay, perfect. If I need more, if I need it to be darker, which I doubt, because it's going to dry darker anyway, I'll add another layer. Now, to prepare for this wall down here, I'll do this and then I'll stop. I'll take a break. I'm taking titanium buff, ultramarine violet, touch of a very small amount of raw umber, and I'm going to do this part. And meanwhile, I'm going to add a bit of burnt sienna. Now here I'm adding more ultramarine violet. So it's not one color, it's a couple of colors. And we are going to highlight eventually. It will dry darker, but it's a really good base for what we're going to be doing eventually. anything that's off-white in the reference. The columns. We can do with this titanium buff, ultramarine violet, touch of raw umber. Good base. It dries darker. We can highlight it and it will look fantastic. I'm not worried about the detail of the column at the top. I think these are ionic. They're called ionic. This style. I would do the detail later on. Wow. Thunder is loud.
Yeah, we're starting to get it here now.
Eventually, yeah, it's gonna happen everywhere. Yeah. And then it stops and then goes back to sun and everything's good. Dark here, the stairs underneath. And we'll show more once we start highlighting, you'll see. And it's not going to be, I am trying my best not to get too much detail in here. We want a hint of a suggestion of steps. Although this side will be a little bit stronger in terms of detail than the back. Okay. Right, let's highlight the wall. I'm gonna try to use a round brush, a big one. I'll see how it goes. So I'm gonna take, because we're highlighting, I'm taking titanium buff, and I'm gonna put a touch of Naples yellow in it. Because of the sun. So, and it's nicer to have a bit of yellow in there because the wall is mostly warm colors. So, okay, let's start. The wall is highlighted quite a bit from top. I'm gonna go down. Now I do have two little detail in there. We could ignore them and like balcony or not balcony, windowsill. We can keep them or ignore them. It doesn't matter. They're not important. They're not a focal point. They're not going to do anything to the painting except that they do give the shadow underneath a purpose, why there's a shadow underneath there or in between. There's like a sunlight between the in here, and then there's a bit of shadow underneath. That's why. But really, other than that, even if I continued with nothing, it'll be fine. No detail. Okay, let's keep going at the bottom. So the side of this building is highlighted quite a bit. Then just trying to be careful where I'm putting my highlights. Then I'm going to pull in a bit of raw umber and burnt sienna and some ultramarine violet with my titanium buff that I was using. And then I'm going to come here and change the value to a more of a darker than the highlight, lighter than what I was doing in there, lighter than the original layer that we have. Soften this, strong. And down here as well. Let's soften all of this dark color that we had before. I'm using titanium buff, touch of Naples yellow, and then I'm adding in it raw umber, touch of raw umber, and ultramarine violet. And let's keep some of the burnt sienna showing, so we don't want to lose it completely. So now I'm adding burnt sienna at the bottom. A bit more burnt sienna into this. This is more like a glaze, what I'm doing right now. There's nothing heavy in here, no heavy paint. Just a group or selection of different values in here. trying to keep my brush strokes a variation of colors in there. So it's not one color on the wall. You know, every time you look at a part, you see a different color in there. There's I can see burnt sienna, ultramarine violet with raw umber, some titanium buff in here. And then we have a strong highlight in there. And we have at the bottom an addition of ultramarine violet and burnt sienna. Trying to keep the highlight mostly top part. Now I'm going to change my brush, round one smaller, and I'm just going to put a hint of those windows that I see on the side. If you can, just a bit, so it looks interesting, but not too detailed. I can see an arch. Goes down. The one next to it. Another one here. Goes down. And another one right here. Okay, a hint of a window. Actually, there are two windows, so. There are two windows there, so it's just. Maybe even three, but I can't see the third one and I'm not gonna go there. This is good. This is enough. Might just do a triangle, a little bit of a, I'm going to take titanium buff and put some burnt sienna in it, touch of burnt sienna. And I'm just going to do a little detail here like that. And another one right here. You don't want to put it, there's no need, no problem. It's not important. Now, we can move to the bottom part. There's a bit of an off-white color at the bottom where the stones are. So I'm going to use titanium buff and raw umber and just give it a bit of a. I'm not worried about the detail. I'm not really it shows big pieces of stone in there. Raw umber, ultramarine violet. I'm just going to come here, push this up. So I have a soft kind of movement in there. Okay. Work on the steps a bit. This part. So for this, we'll need flat brush or bright, small one. Yep, this is good. I'm going to start with titanium buff. Titanium buff has a bit of touch, very small amount of raw umber or burnt sienna, doesn't matter. And I'm going to start with the highlight that's facing me. So this one here, that's the strong highlight because the side is highlighted as well, side of the step, but it has purple in it. Okay. Can use titanium buff and Naples yellow. Actually, titanium buff and ultramarine violet. Yeah. Ultramarine violet, Naples yellow, titanium buff. Let's put a bit of detail in here. Not too much highlights. I want some highlight in here, but not too much. This is a combination of titanium buff, ultramarine violet, and a touch of Naples yellow. Naples yellow mixed with, now this is Naples yellow mixed with burnt sienna. Titanium buff, ultramarine violet. We need to go darker. Raw umber. Just the side right here. This is dark, like burnt umber color in there. With my titanium buff, I'm adding a bit of burnt umber for the back stairs. And the ones that go to the other side. And I'm not doing anything that looks too detailed in here. Just hint. When I go to the bottom, when I get to the bottom, I'm darkening more with just raw umber and a bit of ultramarine violet. Push that in. So you can see that, you know, the first couple of steps, we can see them well, and then they disappear. And I'm going to darken a bit using raw umber and ultramarine violet. And darken this part. Once we put the water on, the color of the water and all of that, the boat and everything, this will be like a really secondary kind of detail. This is the important part right here, the one you see, the one on this side. That one in the back, just a hint. Okay. Before we tackle the actual columns, what we should do is work on the inside, but I'm going to stop for a minute. Right, so let's take, before we start highlighting the columns, we need to finish what's behind them, the colors and the details, and then we will tackle the highlight of the columns. So I'm using, I know on the camera it looks like black or dark brown, but it's actually raw umber and ultramarine violet. So there's no black in here, but it does look really dark. So I'm going to start with this scalloped detail over the columns. Inside the door, in between the columns, just raw umber and ultramarine violet. Once I get to the bottom of this detail, I'm going to switch and put some, a little bit of burnt sienna into my color and a tiny bit of titanium buff. Because I'm going to be putting eventually, I'm going to be putting a light color over it, detail. So I need this background that's dark, but I don't want it too dark. Not like almost black, which is not black. Again, it is raw umber and ultramarine violet. Great. Okay. Good. It's a good color. Now let's tackle this part, or actually above the door. Let's take burnt sienna and add a bit of burnt umber in it. Titanium buff. And let's take it, put it right here above the door, because eventually we're going to go darker. And now I'm going to take raw umber, which has a bit of ultramarine violet in it. I just want to make sure that when I'm coming down from this detail, I'm getting a soft transition from dark to light. Top part is darker, bottom part is lighter. So this is darker up here, darker, again, darker. Detail is not that important because the columns are going to be over. Even if you lose the shape of the columns, it doesn't matter. I switch my brush wider. Wet my brush. Again, the same idea. Darker at the top, lighter at the bottom. So I'm gonna start adding burnt sienna and a bit of the raw umber in there. Again, push, or I'm adding ultramarine violet. I'll explain why in a minute. I'm doing this here. Because I need to push this wall in, and that's the only way, is by darkening, pushing it in. We darken this part that's in, and we highlight the outside part. Okay, now we can take whatever I have on my brush, it doesn't matter. I'm going to add a bit of titanium buff in it, mix it. And I'm going to start, oh, that's not enough, titanium buff. And start adding a bit of highlight in here. And that will just automatically, it will make the wall look like it's going in. Because this is lighter, this is where the light is, and this is where inside it's dark. So I can see in the reference, there's like window and stuff like that. I'll ignore it for now. And I'm just going to work on this, and then I'll stop. This is raw umber, ultramarine violet, same what we were using inside, but I'm going to put a bit of titanium buff in it, because if I don't, then I'm going to be seeing, this is going to be, I'm going to lose the detail. First layer. A bit of titanium buff. Good. Raw umber, ultramarine violet. Mix them. And then a dark brown. I'm getting a dark brown. I'm just going to be adding this detail in here. This part is the darkest part in here. Okay, same colors, but I'm going to push or pull in some titanium buff. I need more darks. Even if I have to go and pull, bring in some black for this part, I'll do that. But for now, I just need a darker or lighter version of the colors up here. It's not an important detail. It's a lovely detail. Very nice, but it's not something that I need to work on too much. See, there's a bit of a subtle value in change of value in here. Very subtle. Very nice. Good. And wait for it to dry, because once the color dries, I can see if it needs to be adjusted. I'm going to take a bit of titanium buff put in it a bit of raw umber and just kind of add a detail in here of the frame. There's a kind of a window maybe in here. So what I'm going to do is just a hint. Of something happening here. Okay, let's work on this lamp. There's a little lamp inside. I'm taking, first I'm going to start with Naples yellow, touch of ultramarine violet in my Naples yellow. As you can see it, it's a lovely detail. Good. Now it looks like it will work out better if I add, because it's more like a red. So I'm adding here, I'm putting burnt sienna with my color, and it looks good. This is burnt sienna and Naples yellow and an ultramarine violet. I'm adding a little bit more ultramarine violet to my burnt sienna, and I'm going to come here on one side and darken it a bit, because it shouldn't look highlighted everywhere. Here we go. That's better. Shouldn't be seeing it too much. By the time it's dry, if it's still too light, too strong, I can glaze it and push it back. Okay. You know what? Since we're working on this, let's try to highlight a bit columns. Start with titanium buff. Round brush, hint of a detail, especially for the one in the back. Oops, sorry. Zoom in. Okay. So you see here, just a hint of a detail. Titanium buff, round brush, and a hint of a detail. So it's just kind of it's not really a detail. I'm not doing anything. I'm just putting dots, taking advantage of the darks. Light's coming from this side, from the left. My titanium buff is not heavy. This column in the back, this one here, is wider than the rest. I want to make it round, so I don't want it to look like it's squared. I'm pushing in the highlight slowly in, so it doesn't end with a sharp line. Same thing for this one. Again, so the closer we get to my side, to our side, the more detail we're going to see, but still, we're not doing detail. Hint. I'm gonna pull some titanium buff. I'm adding a bit of water so I'll get a nice highlights, or kind of the color, the paint will run smoothly. So this is drying darker. I'm highlighting a bit more one side. Again, I don't need to do too much in here, especially the one in the back. Even I know I'm looking at those columns and I can see that they are darker brown on top and lighter at the bottom. I am really not going there. I just want to have some interesting detail. And then now this one here, although there's sun coming from this side, from the left, hitting this part, there is a strong sun coming from here too, like lights actually from this side. So to make it easier for me, I'm going to start highlighting where I see a strong highlight. It's easier for me. Now, hint of more of a stronger detail in here. Trying to get the shape, not exactly the same, but a hint of something ionic. I will be highlighting more eventually. For now, it's good enough. I have a feeling I need to change my brush. Yep, no, it's not cooperating. Let's take this one here and see, maybe this one is better. Yeah, it's this much better. Now, the left side, I can see detail, but it's not a strong highlight. And you'll see in a minute, I will be highlighting this more. Although I'm highlighting this left side, I'll be highlighting this more when it's completely dry. Now, let's go back to the ones further back, the ones we did. And I'm adding ultramarine violet to my titanium buff. I'm going to come and just add a tiny bit of detail, not much. Just want to leave it completely with no detail. Okay, now, again, take titanium buff, enhance a bit the highlight in here, some of it, just to make it more interesting. Again, clean my brush, take some titanium buff, just titanium buff now, nothing else. And if this is not enough by the time it's dry, if I need to add white, I'll add white to this side. Okay, good. That's good. Ultramarine violet with my titanium buff. And I am going to put a hint of detail here, hint of the bottom detail in here. Because there are those wooden pieces that stop usually the gondola from hitting the walls and the stairs. We don't know what's happening behind, so I'm just gonna add a very soft detail in here. Eventually, by the time we're done, if we feel like we need to put some of these those wooden columns or wooden pieces to stop the gondola, we will, if we need to, if we feel like we need to do that. just water. I'm softening these lines, what I'm doing here. I'm putting a bit of burnt sienna. Burnt umber. Ultramarine. Ultramarine violet. Just an illusion. Nothing really detailed in here. We'll do this next week.